Boker Tov and good morning. I am Rabbi Stephen Moskowitz, and this is Monday Musings. I am thrilled to be here with my guest this morning, Rabbi Michael Moskowitz of Congregation Shir Shalom in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you go first, Mike.
It's good. We actually planned this one because we are guaranteed two viewers, our parents. But besides that, we actually love being together, and it's a chance for us to catch up and share with all of you and talk about things that are really important to us that we believe have value for us as in the Jewish community.
Yes. And I thought we were talking about Jerusalem as well and Israel.
We were. I was going to go there in just a moment. Yeah.
Okay. Please.
So, well, what's for Stephen and me, every summer it seems we both land in Jerusalem, and it's always been. He reminded me right before we started that we've actually, as adults, probably met there more than any other place in our lives. So I want to start with, for you, Steve, why is Jerusalem such a priority in your life, and why are you so drawn to be there so often?
Yeah, it's really this summer is strange in many ways for obviously what's going on with the pandemic. But the biggest shift for me is this is the first July in many years, and well over a decade that I'm not in Jerusalem studying at Machon Hartman at the Shalom Hartman Institute. And although the Hartman Institute did a great job with their online learning this year, it's not the same as being at the Machon. And studying in Jerusalem, and Susie and I going there and walking the streets of Jerusalem. I don't know, it just seems like it's easier to breathe when I arrive in the summer and arrive in Jerusalem to recharge my batteries and reconnect to that place. It's just an amazing experience, and it's been such a big part of my spiritual life and a part of my preparations for the high holidays. And figuring out what I want to teach for the coming year. So that's a whole reorientation. I mean, there's many reorientations that are going on this year, but not being able to be in Jerusalem is certainly on the top of the list. And as you said, we always seem to run into each other more often than not in Jerusalem when you're leading a tiyul and I'm studying there at Hartman. So why do you go to Jerusalem almost every summer?
I was going to ask. For me,
and whose Monday Musings is this?
Moskowitz Monday Musings. So I feel similarly when I get to there's something unique about Jerusalem that is invigorating, inspiring, and draws me back, constantly. And I also love bringing others there too to have that experience. So I'm blessed to have had many of those opportunities. But I was ask you, because I think we feel similarly about that. Why do you believe Jerusalem does that for us?
Jerusalem's home. I feel at home there almost more than any other place. Mom and dad are watching this, so so I'm going to be in trouble. But perhaps part of it. I mean, I don't want to be too self-analytical, but. When we moved to St. Louis, you were much younger, and you spent many more years in St. Louis growing up there than I did. And so, much of my childhood was moving back and moving around. So I think Jerusalem, it's where Susie and I met. It's that formative first year in Jerusalem in rabbinical school. But there's no place that I feel more at home. And we rent the same apartment every year. So there's a certain amount of ritual and habit, I think, as well, to when we go to Jerusalem and studying there. But there's part of it that I can't explain, why in this city that's, not in a country that I'm a citizen of, do I feel most at home there?
Yeah. I always wonder as well, feeling that connection and that pull back to Jerusalem, right? Like no other place in the world. And I'm always explaining that to people as I ask them to come with me to Israel, saying, go on this trip, a trip of a lifetime, whether it's telling them to let their children go with us on the teen mission or a family mission or adults. And what is so special about that there's a piece that's indescribable that, welcoming Shabbat in Jerusalem, going to Machane Yehuda, on Friday, getting ready for Shabbat and buying the fresh chalot, even though you and I can't have them. But the experience of those things, as well as our collective memory as Jews, right? The idea of walking into the city of David and knowing King David was actually here, right? And the idea of what was written there and what was created for us as people. You love poetry, like you're always quoting poetry, Psalms, much more than I do in a spiritual way, which I find really meaningful in how you teach me with that. So much of that was written right there. Whether it was, Yehuda Amachai in the, 50 years ago or 30 years ago, or King David 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, I don't, there's a piece of it is definitely history, but living there that year in 86, 87 for the first year of rabbinical school was such a powerful experience. And our cousins who live there and our citizens in Israel, they kind of joke to me. They're like, you get to come here and you don't have to worry about paying taxes, and you can take cabs if you want. You don't have to take the bus, and you don't have to worry about the difficulties of life in Jerusalem, or the expense, because I'm only there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at most. So they said, they've suggested that my perspective is somewhat warped in terms of that I'm not having to deal with the drudgery of everyday living. That any place that you build a home in and that you live in and that you have to go shopping regularly and deal with all of those things and call the utility company when something's not working. That makes it harder. We don't have to deal with that. So yeah. I don't know if it's the history, though. I don't know if it's like walking in King David's steps as much as just, almost like a personal connection and part of my life.
I mean, there's no doubt I feel both, right? I had a formative year there in 1991, and both of us, and if we move into some of the challenges of Israel and Jerusalem, both of us have spent time in bomb shelters in Jerusalem.
Yes.
Right. I was there during the first Persian Gulf War, and
your first year was interrupted.
Yeah, and the challenges around that, and I remember, like, for me as a 22-year-old, it was almost, you feel invulnerable and weren't worried about it. We were given gas masks and atropine injections. We carried, it was a little brown box we had to carry around with us. And I remember getting a tour of the bomb shelter at school and putting my bombas, a little bag of bombas I was eating, in the corner there behind a pipe, saying, "Ooh, this will be there if we get stuck here one day." I didn't really think we'd end up going down there, right? 2 months later, 3 months later. So bombas don't expire, so it was good.
No, they do not expire at all.
Right. So that was relevant. But that tension, and knowing that Israelis are constantly feeling that, right, and aware of that differently than us. It's almost like what grandparents sometimes say. They get to leave. They love holding the babies, their grandchildren, but then they get to leave. Right. And so the stresses that we sort of leave behind, in a sense, and it's a piece of us that we don't have to necessarily carry with us. But I do feel that because we have so many personal connections with Israelis now, with our friends. Right. You talked about your cousins, Susie's family that's there. Right. And I have friends there that are like family now, too, who I care about deeply and worry about at times. And I worry right now. Those who are certain industries in the tour industry who are just devastated by the pandemic, right?
Yeah,
and you would think in Israel, their government helping them in a socialist country differently, and our government's helped and given more money out to those in need than theirs has.
Yeah, just to reflect on this a little bit more, because I've been. My year, 86, 87 was, by comparison, somewhat idyllic. I had, it was before the first Intifada. We had free reign of Jerusalem, walking through the old city. There was not the same borders or boundaries or the feelings of those. You were there during the first Gulf War, and was obviously a much more tense time. I have been there during, very tense times, but perhaps because that formative year was in that sort of almost like perfect state, that's part of what makes me feel as I do. I rebel against the idea, that Jerusalem and Israel is always under attack, and it's always on the precipice, and that we have to do everything to shore up its defenses. I mean, I think Israel is very strong. I'm not suggesting that Israel doesn't face enormous struggles and enormous difficulties, but it's a very strong state, a vibrant place, and its vibrancy and that's exactly where the poetry comes from. I mean, I think Israelis are the largest consumers of poetry in the world, per capita. And so, that's like, there's such life. And when you read the paper or you read the emails that we receive, you sometimes say, Israel's, you got to worry, if not for us, Israel would be subjected to attack. But and there are difficulties and struggles, but it's a beautiful and vibrant place filled with life, and that's what I resonate with so much.
What about the challenge around, and it's, there's a beauty in it too when you see the secular and religious side by side. And you and me consider ourselves religious people, even though we're progressively religious people, right? We're not in black hats and long beards and keep out all the time. So obviously you see that. We're not aware of that. Just in case anyone was tuning in for someone else.
I was like, when are you? Okay.
Sorry. So, but you see that side by side so commonly in Jerusalem, right? And there's that tension too, which there's an excitement to it, but also at times I feel a real struggle and anger towards it as well. An example that is always so striking for me, we visit Eliezer Ben Yehuda's house. At the bottom of Ben Yehuda Street, where Eliezer Ben Yehuda, the founder of modern Hebrew, who wrote the first dictionary in modern Hebrew, lived with his wife and his son and daughter and their dog. And the historical plaque outside his home that dedicates it to, says what happened there, is always missing, because his home borders on Mea Shearim, the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, and the ultra-Orthodox castigate him for creating Hebrew as a modern language, because only, right, the Lashon Kodesh, the holy language, only be used for prayer and study. And so they ripped that plaque off. I've never seen there. You can see the outline. And it's like, come on, right? And that struggle is constantly there. And there's a piece of me that gets really angry about that. How do you reconcile that?
Well, Israeli politics are, they're filled with tensions, and the struggle with Haredim, with the ultra Orthodox in Israel is quite profound. But again, I don't think that represents Israel. I think that the political control that the ultra-Orthodox have is an enormous problem, both for the status of Reform Jews and progressive Jews in Israel. I mean, you and I cannot officiate at a wedding in Israel that would be recognized by the state, and that obviously is more than bothersome. But that's not Israel. That's the political power and the historic political power that was given to the ultra-Orthodox that we have to work to change. I mean, I think it goes to change, helping to change Israeli society and making it more pluralistic, and there being greater visions of what Judaism means. I mean, there is this impression in Israel that the only thing that Judaism is what they do, not what I do.
Right.
But part of what I love about Israel, going back to this, is that Israel's like just Jewish in the streets. Like, even if someone isn't going to synagogue on Friday night and they walk by you, they're going to say Shabbat Shalom. And so, it's just, and that's just, the Jewishness is infused in Israeli culture and in Israeli life. I'm not saying the problem is quite profound that you point out, and it's frustrating and maddening, But that's not what I mostly see. I see it more when I go to the Kotel, when I go to the wall, and Susie and I can't stand together. That's where I feel it.
Right, right. And both of you have done work with Women at the Wall, right?
Yes.
And the importance of the equality of women being recognized there as everywhere, uh, and the challenges in Israeli society around that too. I would add to one thing you said, in the frustrations of what's going on in Israel politically. On the everyday street, I always feel welcomed and comfortable. I always feel like this is home, right? And that people want me there. The natives, the people who live there, are like. And granted, I'm a tourist, right? The native, right? That I'm a tourist, and I'm going to be buying food or whatever, right? But the people, the people who are citizens of Jerusalem, they want me there. They like when I'm there, and I feel welcome. I dream of owning an apartment in Jerusalem. If I were to live anywhere in Israel, I would choose to live in Jerusalem still, right?
Yeah.
How, you too?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. Israelis who are like us, so to speak, in terms of their religious practice, and are leaving Jerusalem. And so it's interesting that as an American Jews find the most meaning there. Most of my cousins have left, of our cousins, our children's contemporaries. They're not living in Jerusalem, because Jerusalem, you have to admit, can feel, and I felt this when I lived there for the year, it can feel, constraining. And that you have to observe this way, that you have
Right.
to, go down this path. And
Right.
so, but I think I would. I think Jerusalem is definitely the place.
Yeah, there's
I didn't know you were buying me an
comfort
apartment, by the way, but that's nice. Thank you.
together, little timeshare, Moskowitz time.
Timeshare.
So
That's worked out well for us.
when we have Shira on, we'll discuss that one. So, yeah, I do dream of that. Listen, with my son, who's going to be studying there for the next few years,
Right.
and
But he's going to be outside Tel Aviv.
He's going to be outside. He's going to be Herzliya. But the idea that I get to go potentially more often, and one of my frustrations is that I'm always leading trips. I love leading trips. I so appreciate and enjoy those opportunities, but I haven't had time in a long time to relax in Israel, to relax in Jerusalem. And I will say, you mentioned that it can be constraining at times, the feeling in Jerusalem. I also love the fact that it's holy for all three religions, for Judaism, for Christianity, and for Islam. I love hearing the Islamic call to prayer as I'm praying too in the background. There's something really holy about that, and that somehow we're living together through this. I dream of that time in the future when we will always be able to, and there won't be threats around that. You taught me in your experiences, because you said it was idyllic when you were living there, because Stephen, for those who don't know, taught some Palestinian teens English, and would go to an area we can't go to today, that I would not be allowed to go to today, right?
No, it was in Beit Safafa. It was it's which is part of Jerusalem municipality. It was cut in half in the '67, before the '67 war. But so yeah, it's not in the territories.
So Steve, went to meet with these children every week and taught them English. And so when I was visiting Steve that year in 1986, I was invited in, and this family, I remember, the most beautiful of Arab hospitality, right? The idea of how many cakes and pastries, tea and coffee could be brought out to us. And it was so
And don't you remember, we had to go to each of the students' homes? Like we thought we were done after the first house, and then we said, no, now you're going to come to my house. And so we had a similar spread at each house.
Right. And, I want to sort of end with that thought as well, because in our media presents a picture at times of how tense things are in Israel and the challenges. Yeah. And I may even played into that and asking you some of those questions. But for you and me, we both have constantly these experiences of warmth, both from traditional Jews, secular Jews, from Arabs who live in Israel, from Christian Arabs, from Muslim Arabs, people who've welcomed us into their lives too. And I think that's really how most people feel right? And we can't let extremism to kidnap our connections to these lands.
Yeah, and I want to conclude my show with another thought. So, so no, I was thinking about something as you were talking in terms of that most of your experience as a rabbi in going to Jerusalem is leading a tiyul, is teaching, and most of my experience going to Jerusalem is as a student and sitting in class. And those are, obviously very different experiences in terms of, what we're both doing in Jerusalem. And for me, part of what recharges my batteries is to be sitting at the back of the class and just learning and soaking it in. And I think that's what Jerusalem offers me more than anything else. Is just being able to, not lead and see where Jerusalem, might take me that summer. So thank you for inviting me on your show, Mike.
Thank you for inviting me to your Monday Morning Musings. Thank you to Brian Fishman behind the scenes again on this Monday and helping us at Temple Shir Shalom. Other classes to share with you. Of course, we have our trip to Israel tomorrow at noon. With Benny and Rabbi Daniel. It's a Zoom trip at Temple Shir Shalom. If you'd like to join us, let us know. We'll get you the information. I think, Stephen, you have a class tomorrow too?
I do have my Torah study class at 1 o'clock on Zoom. And also the following Wednesday, we have Billy Planner coming to both Temple Beth Torah and our congregation Lador Vador, to talk about the historic civil rights era and Jewish-Black relations. And that Wednesday, this is not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday, our cantor is starting a Wednesday evening Tune In with Talia, where she's going to be interviewing, Broadway musicians and stars and entertaining us. So we're very much looking forward to that on Wednesday evenings as well.
In this time of pandemic, one of the challenges has been connecting with one another, but it's also through technology and collaboration, one of the opportunities that we're given and gifts that we've been able to experience. With that in mind, if you're a member of Stephen's congregation or Susie's and you want to be a part of one of our programs, or part of my congregation and want to be part of Stephen's Torah study, just, Facebook message either of us and we'll get you the links to be a part of that so you can join in and enjoy that with us. We love learning. We love connecting with one another and being a part of this. So thanks for joining us on this Monday, and we wish you all a healthy week, a safe week, and take care of one another.